Zig Ziglar said, if you go looking for a friend, you're going to find they're very scarce. If you go out to be a friend, you'll find them everywhere. And I love that quote, and I'm thankful that I have you for a friend, Carla Moore. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. This is Looking Up, a podcast for Christian women. I'm Kathy Pollard. We just get together every week and chat about things that are on our hearts and try to encourage those who are listening in. If you're returning to listen, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We thank you for joining us. We ask if you find any value in this show to like it, follow, subscribe, and comment, if you will. We've said this before, but if you're new here, you might not know this, but we have zero interest in ever monetizing this channel. So we're not interested in growing viewership for that reason, but we are interested in playing along with the algorithm so that more women can see it and find it. And that means that the more likes and comments and follows that we have, the more exposure we'll get. So you'd really be doing us a favor if you can help us out in that way. We're going to be talking about how to have your best year yet. But before we get into that, Carla, how are you?
I'm doing well. And I like how you changed things up there and started off with the name of the quote, the person who you got your quote from. That was real smooth how I said that, wasn't it? It wasn't very Zig Ziglarish.
Everybody
That's
knows
something
we are always really smooth on this
I didn't.
podcast.
Yeah. I didn't know that came from Zig Ziglar though, because John used to always tell the boys, I went to find a friend and couldn't find one there. I went to be a friend and friends were everywhere. So I didn't, that came from Zig Ziglar. He's got a lot of good stuff.
He does. When I was a teenager, I used to listen to him all the time. I remember
Really?
all of his illustrations. Yeah, my dad suggested it. I guess he thought I needed some
You needed some friends or something?
motivation. And
What's the famous book that he wrote? Oh, it's something about what's the famous thing he wrote?
I actually don't know. I've never read anything by
Win
him.
friends and influence people. If you want to,
Oh,
how to win
okay.
friends and influence people.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. This was back in the day of cassette tapes, and I would listen to his cassettes when I was going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually heard a podcast not too long ago of this guy who said his dad also turned him on to the Zig Ziglar stuff and he was listening to it. He's like in fifth grade. And so then he said that Zig Ziglar told the, whoever's listening to him that you need to ask people about themselves. And so here in fifth grade, this little boy was walking up to his friends or people he wanted to get to know and saying, so tell me about yourself. When you're 10 years old, it just doesn't have quite the same
That's
feel
cute.
as when you're 20 or
Yeah.
25 or whatever. Yeah, it was
That's
funny.
really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've got a busy week ahead of you. I know. I guess
Mm-hmm.
by the time this airs, it'll be over.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll be relaxing a little bit. But in
I hope
between
so.
now and then, you're speaking, you're hostessing, all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's focal point week, which is unusual because normally that's in May. But I think that Wayne and some of the people that helped plan it thought that maybe January might be better because there's so much going on in May with graduations and other, just May is a crowded month. So they thought we'll try January and see. But it's been snowpocalypse here. We had a whole 3/4 of an inch of snow. They got a lot in Houston though, but here we got like sleet and a little bit of ice and then snow.
Oh, okay.
And everybody makes fun of Texas and southern states when we close things down, but we don't have
You
trucks
have
to
to.
snow plows. We don't have any of the protective equipment. And we don't know how to drive on any of it either. And when there's ice underneath it, it's just really dangerous. But it was kind of funny because on Sunday, with all of this forecasted on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, which was just yesterday, they closed school a couple of days in advance. So we were
Wow.
laughing a little bit because they didn't even wait till the night before to make the call. But of course, my grandkids were thrilled, and they had MLK Day was Monday, and then they had Tuesday off, and I think they may even have today off, or maybe it was a late start, but they had a ball down in Houston. I think they got like 4 inches, and
Wow.
they Emmy's got a horse, Missy, and they went out to the barn, and they have a little field out there and a paddock, and they hooked a trash can lid up to somehow, I don't exactly know how it was attached, ropes or whatever. And Emmy rode the horse and pulled Jackson and Emmy and Aaron also on this trash can lid. I called it a tray ride instead of a sleigh ride, but they had a ball. We enjoyed it from inside. It was nice to have a day when you couldn't go anywhere.
Mhm.
But anyway, I know a lot of people are not enjoying the cold and a lot of people are suffering from it. I think your hands are suffering from going outside to milk peaches, aren't they?
Yes. So yeah, I had all the milking chores because Neil left early this morning for Focal Point. He had to
Mhm.
leave about 3:30 in the morning.
Ew.
And it just so happens it is our coldest night, like record breaking coldest night.
How
So
cold is it?
it was 0 degrees overnight.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yuck.
So when I got up this morning, well, I actually got up right after Neil left because I couldn't go back to sleep. It was 4 degrees by that point. So it was pretty balmy by
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it was. I was feeling all tough girl outside taking care of the barn chores and stuff, but yeah, it's cold. It's cold for sure. So
Glad I don't live out in it. Thankful. It really does make you thankful for warmth and my little
yes.
space heater that I don't know if you can hear
Mhm.
it, but I don't really care because it's right by my feet and I'm warm. I think I sit too much by a space heater because when I leave it, then I'm cold.
Oh, yeah. Well, just don't leave
Oh,
it on
well,
overnight.
no,
Public
I don't
service
do that.
announcement.
Yeah, I don't do that. But I
So
do.
did you have,
John, he
go
teases
ahead.
me that I should put it on wheels because I carry it around from room to room.
Like put it on a string attached to your belt
Yeah.
or something. It can just
Uh,
follow you around.
like those little caterpillars and things that the kids pull. This is my space
Oh yeah,
heater.
yeah, there you go. You'll have
Mhm.
to name it then.
Yeah.
Listeners,
Okay.
how about suggestions?
Maybe carrying it a bit far. My little pet.
Okay. I was starting to have fun with that.
Oh, okay, go for it.
So in between all your preparations, did you have time to go thrifting?
I did. I made a quick little stop in the other day and I found four J. Crew cashmere sweaters, and two of them still had the tags on them, and they are
What?
my size. Yes. This
What?
is one. This is actually a Bowden is the brand name, but it's cashmere, and I liked it. And I
Mm.
don't know if I'm going to list them or keep them. Well, I probably will list a couple of them because they're not really my. I don't really wear zebra
Oh,
print, but yeah, cashmere, J. Crew,
very, very nice. That's a good find.
or
That's probably
five
what
ninety
yeah,
nine.
that's one of my favorite brands.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if these were your size, I'd send them to you, but they're my size, and you and I are not the same size, so
Thanks for thinking of me anyway.
yeah. Yeah, unless you want an oversized cashmere sweater, which
It sounds so good right now.
they really are warm, but it was
Mhm.
fun. I didn't haven't spent much time there. It was like just a quick run through, and I love it when that happens. It doesn't really happen very often, but that was my find for this
Very
week.
nice. Very
Yeah.
nice.
So, have you
Good.
had any sheet pan soup lately?
Oh, wow. Really?
I think you should tell everybody about your sheet pan soup.
I can't. I told you I wasn't going to be gross after the fingernail
Oh,
story.
come on. Well, you brought up the fingernail. Now you have to just continue on with the sheet
Oh,
pan soup.
I was very excited about it. The recipe is called sheet pan soup, and you roast all of these beautiful green vegetables like leeks and broccoli and zucchini and what else did I tell you? I don't even remember.
Kale? No. Did you say
Um,
leeks? Garlic?
Leeks, yeah, yeah, garlic, and while that's roasting, then you have a pot of broth simmering with fresh herbs and peas, and then you blend it all together and you add in some fresh spinach and crushed red pepper and all that kind of stuff. So I was so excited because it was sounded amazing and I love all those vegetables and very nourishing. And I'd made some fresh bread and I'd cut some, like a really good cheddar and but execution or something was just off for me because in the bowl, I drizzled it with some olive oil and put fresh basil on top and cracked pepper. And when I took that first spoonful and it kind of dripped off the bowl, it looked way too much like a newborn baby poopy diaper. And the texture was off. It was a pretty color green. It was just, I don't know. That with the tech, it was just not doing it for me. And so it tasted good, but it was just too off-putting the way it
Could you
looked.
just put a blindfold on and eat it anyway?
Oh, I know what I missed. It was Yukon Gold potatoes. So
Yeah.
you cube a couple of those and roast it alongside it. And it's supposed to
Hmm.
be for the texture of the soup to thicken it up a little
Yeah.
bit. But I think that's what made it wonky. I think I would have liked it better if I'd left that out. anyway, it's just one of those things, I'm just almost humming while I'm doing all the prep work and chopping vegetables because I'm like, this is going to be so amazing. And then I ate a few bites and I just couldn't do it. I was like,
Texture is such a funny thing. And I haven't realized this until, I don't know, the last few years because I always felt bad for things that I didn't like because I feel like I'm pretty picky. And I think to myself, well, I really like that flavor, but I don't like that, like tomatoes, honestly. I don't like, I love things made with tomatoes, but to just eat a tomato, there's seeds and there's blah, 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 and it just makes me,
I love
it
tomatoes.
gives me, I see, I want to. And I
Yeah.
have grown up thinking, okay, well, you're just still a kid. That's the thing. But it's texture for me. I just don't,
Mm.
there's certain textures that like I can feel the back of my throat tingling. And I don't want to be that way, but it just is what it is.
That's
And
right.
so
Yeah.
I probably would have loved that because, I'm not going to eat a leek. There's something about that texture. But if you blend it up and put some cream in there, and I think that sounds really good. And I probably would
Yeah.
have been fine with it.
It
So,
tasted good. It should have been good. It was just, I don't know. I think just the color plus the texture,
mhm.
my mind went somewhere. And then once it did, it was over.
Yeah.
It was just, I think I would have enjoyed it much better if I had just dumped all those roasted vegetables in my bowl and
And I wouldn't have liked
ate it
that.
that way. And it would have
Yeah.
been delicious. But
Okay. Well, next time you just keep half the vegetables out for you,
that's
and you
right.
can. Do you use a immersion blender for that kind of thing, or like a blender?
I use the blender. I have an immersion blender, but it's not working that well
Hmm.
anymore. And I picked out another one for Christmas and got it and tried it once, and it was even worse than the one I had. So I sent it back. So right now I'm just using my regular blender.
Well, those immersion blenders to me are fraught with danger, just because if
Fraught
you
is such a great
fraught,
word.
I know it's fun to say fraught,
It is.
but if you tilt it the wrong way or lift it too high, and then everything just goes everywhere. So
Yeah, hot
they make me
splatter
nervous.
in your
Yeah.
face. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, well, thanks for sharing your sheet pan soup.
I didn't intend to.
Yeah, well, I just thought you needed to. It just sounded really good.
Oh, I did want to share. I do want to share this. My sister had some really good results. She had a visit with her oncologist, I guess, to do blood work to see if the cancer was back. And in her words, while the cancer is not 100% gone, its presence is minimal enough that they're not looking at, what to do next. They're not talking about any more radiation or anything like that. She'll just go
Hmm.
back in for a checkup
Yeah,
at some point. But she thought that was very good news. And so thankful for that and thankful
that
for
is
all the
good news.
prayers and everybody thinking of her. And she'll be my
Hmm.
baby sister forever and ever. And she has to be okay.
Yeah. Well, anytime you can have some peace after a diagnosis like she's had, it's such
Mhm.
a good thing. So we're
Mhm.
thankful. Glad to hear that.
Thanks.
I meant to share these last week and forgot. This is something that John did for me for Christmas. If you're watching, you can see their
Adorable.
stickers. He did
So cute.
stickers of all the grandkids.
Oh,
And he was so proud of himself because he did it himself. And I'm not sure what company he used, um, but there's so that I have 10 stickers of each. Poor Nolan didn't make it in this one. It's just Turner and Darcy. I guess it was pre Nolan. But
are you
those are
going to put those
fun.
on tumblers or
I
what?
don't know. I haven't decided yet. I
Your
gave one
laptop
set
or
to my
something?
mom. Yeah.
Okay.
I put one set right next to mom's pillow in her room on the
Oh,
windowsill. They're so good. They don't mind. I've hammered so many nails in that wall and stuck things, and they're fine with it. They basically say this room is yours while your mom is here. So
that's fantastic.
it
Did she
is.
listen to our last episode?
She has not said anything about it if she has. It's
Okay.
a little bit harder for her to find things. So I'll have to go find it for her on our TV.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did I mention on here that Neil got me some watercolors for Christmas?
No, you didn't.
Neil got me some watercolors for
He
Christmas.
did.
Yes, isn't that weird?
Why?
Because I don't craft,
You're the
it
only one that says and thinks that you're not crafty.
no, but I really don't. It makes me very, like makes my underarms itch. But because I started doing those charms and things, he was
Hmm.
so proud of himself. He got me a set of watercolors and then he also got me some electric craft scissors.
What do you do with those?
I guess if you work with fabric,
Okay.
use it for that. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But it is now in my basket of goodies. And he was just so proud of himself. And he was like, see, I got you
You're crafty
crafty
now.
things because you're, yeah. So anyway, I've done a couple of practices. I've been watching a few videos. I've done a couple of practices with the watercolors. And of course, I'm terrible. But we have birthdays this month, 3 of them that we're celebrating in this upcoming weekend. And we'd been looking for cards and I couldn't really find any that I liked what they said. And I finally said, I'll just make my own. And so I watercolored. I see.
Look at you. That
Isn't
is
that pretty
adorable.
cute? And then this one.
Well, okay, you can't say you're not crafty
And
anymore.
then this one's for Rich. He's a
That
little.
is adorable, Kathy.
So the beauty of it is I really can't paint anything, but it's really easy to find tutorials and to do these like cute little simple things.
Hmm.
And I was really pleased with the way they turned out. So
Watercolors are fun.
yeah, how about that?
Well, I'm so proud of you.
Thanks. I
And
kept
I
them on the
expect a
table because
birthday
I was
card.
like, look, yeah,
You've got 2 months to plan it. A watercolor birthday card.
don't get your hopes up.
And if you make it where I can unfold it and then I can frame it, that'd be even better.
You are you are very high maintenance.
No, you're going, your sister will tutor you and you'll just be, this is going to be your next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Watercolor Kathy. It's going to be a new YouTube channel.
Hey, did you survive Blue Monday?
What's Blue Monday?
Every third Monday in January is supposed to be Blue Monday. It's supposed to be the most depressing day of the year. So that means when this comes out, it was last Monday. So it was
I was
Monday.
supposed to be blue and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
So that was this past Monday.
Mm-hmm. You missed out
Okay.
on a golden opportunity to be blue.
To mope and complain.
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. Did I survive it or did I mope and complain?
Did you mope and complain?
I didn't realize it until the next morning that I
Well,
missed
I
Blue
feel like
Monday.
we were both cheated out of an opportunity to mope and complain.
Maybe we can observe it this coming Monday.
I don't know. I think probably every Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in January, I am a little mopey and complaining.
That's right.
I'm ready.
It's Blue Month.
Yeah. It's dark
Yeah,
month. I'm
it
ready.
is.
But
Yeah,
I
me
know
too.
I'm so wishy-washy but like we've said so many times, we're summer girls. So it's
Well,
coming.
the first day of spring is March 20th this year.
Oh,
So
not the 21st.
so we're already at the less than 2 months mark.
Mm-hmm.
Ah!
Yeah. Well, and usually we are in Denver this time of the year, and it's always darker there. I guess because like y'all, it's closer to the
Mhm.
cutoff of the time. So it's staying light until like 6:15 now here.
Wow.
What time does it get dark there?
5.
Probably more like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah. See, I'm every day I'm looking, thinking it's 6:10. It's still light outside. I just, one of the things that has helped though with some of it's so dumb and simple, but it really has helped is to turn the lights on in the living room. I guess we grew up with not turning the lights on, but I thought one day I'm just going to turn these lights on because we now have can lights up there and
Okay.
you can like move it up and down and make it brighter. So we just turn them on and don't turn them up full blast. But it just helps my mood to have some light
Yes.
and it's dark. Yeah.
Freaking cold.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I did survive. Thanks for
that's
asking.
good.
I'm going to have
You're
to mark that
welcome.
down.
Yeah, just so you don't miss it next year.
Hmm.
Is there anything else you want to share before we jump into today's topic?
I don't think so. I was considering talking about my brother's toe surgery, but after Neil's thumbnail last week, probably should skip it.
Are you joking or does he really have toe
He did.
surgery?
He
Oh,
did.
he already had toe
He
surgery.
already had it. And I made the mistake of saying when a name pops up on your phone and it says, who it's from, and
Mhm.
it said Doug has sent you an image. And I'm
Oh,
thinking, I don't know that I want to open this, especially knowing that he just had surgery on his toe. And it wasn't. The first one wasn't. But then when I said something about it, I said, thanks for that not being bloody
Oh,
toe
no.
picture. So then the next one, of course, was.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, you just even mentioning or hinting at that, I got chills all up and down my arms just now. So,
Well, I'll make sure I do not forward the
oh,
one that he sent because it's
thank
pretty
you.
gnarly.
Oh, come
Yeah.
on. Okay. Anyways,
Moving
moving
on.
right along. Bum ba dum, bum ba dum. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to make this your best year yet. And, we could go in a whole bunch of different directions with a topic like this. I think last year we talked about that whole fresh start idea that
Mhm.
usually you start feeling in January, whether or not you make New Year's resolutions. You at least start thinking, is there anything I want to do different this year, or, stuff like that. But I was thinking about this topic when a couple of verses came across. I came across a couple of verses that both had the same message. And they were both saying the exact same thing, and they both had to do with how to have basically the good life. And I was just kind of struck by how simple it was and what God finds important compared to maybe all the other things that we think we need to be focused on in order
Mhm.
to have a good life. So that's what I want to talk about today. And it's going to be one central idea from three different verses, which are all pretty much saying the same thing. And the verses are, the first one is Proverbs 11:25, which says, "Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered." So I'm going to read the verses first, and then we'll go back and chat about them. The second one is Luke 6:38, "Give, and it shall be given to you." Excuse me. "Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap, for with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." And then the third verse is one of my favorites, and it has been for a long time. Isaiah 58, verses 10 and 11, which reads, "If you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom shall be as the noonday. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters do not fail."
Mm.
So, just from listening to those three verses, what central theme did you pick up on?
Well, refreshing and serving others and being helpful to other people.
Right. So, if you refresh others, God will refresh you.
Mhm.
And so, I thought we would talk about that a little bit. What does that really mean? What might that look like? And why is it so hard to remember that sometimes? Why do we get so
Mhm.
consumed with self, and then how much easier when we are to get caught up in the things that aren't right or the things that aren't working, and
Mhm.
how we wish things were different. And so I thought maybe this would be a great time of year to talk about a topic like this. And I just love the simplicity of these verses and what they have to say. So the first one, Proverbs 11:25, said again, "Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered." So I think that's ESV that I first jotted that one down. And the New American Standard, it reads prosperous. So the one who
Mhm.
brings the blessing is prosperous.
That
So
my footnote says made fat.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Oh,
So
sorry.
no, that's okay. So I looked it up, because
Mhm.
they seemed slightly different to me in
Mhm.
their rendering, and even how the verse itself was worded. And I wanted to know what it meant. And yes, it literally means grow fat.
I don't know if I want that.
We can do that all by ourselves. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. But we understand the idea is you're not wanting, you're
Mhm.
not starving. You have
Right.
everything you need and then some. You
Mhm.
have plenty. So God is saying that when you look for ways to bless others, then you're the one ultimately that's going to be blessed. And when you water others, I even love the way that's worded.
Mhm.
One who waters will himself be watered, because it's that visual of
Mhm.
refreshing, and
Yeah.
somebody's parched and thirsty, and you think about that being the most basic need. There's nothing worse than being thirsty and you don't have anything to drink.
Right.
And but just offering a glass of water is so refreshing, and at times can be even life-saving for
Mhm.
somebody. And but how simple is it?
Mm.
It's not complicated, it's not hard, but God says, when you're the blessing, I will bless you. When you give the water, you yourself will be watered. And the second one in Luke 6:30. Oh, do you want to say something about that before I go on? I feel like I'm just like blah, 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 blah,
No,
blah.
well, it may be better later, but just thinking that only God can take something like that where you're the one pouring out
Mhm.
and yet you're being poured into at the same time. And only God can make that happen. That's just not
Yes.
something that the world sees. And it's not something that the world really encourages, where you see so many things about, um, I took a much needed vacation, or it was a much needed date night. And of course, I mean, we all need those things. We need to be refreshed by things like that. But
Mhm.
you just, it doesn't make worldly sense to serve in order to be refreshed, or to do something for someone else in order for you to feel that same uh, accomplishment's not the right word, but that same refreshing, I guess,
Mhm.
when you do what God wants you to do. So,
Yes, and how easy is it to get stingy? Just have that stingy mindset, stingy with my time, stingy with my resources, stingy,
mhm,
stingy, stingy. And, because I feel like I have to hang on to those things so I don't run out. I'm not depleted. I don't, whatever it is. But I think, it's so basic what he's saying. Like you said, you can give, give, give. You're not going to run out because God's going to keep filling you back up. And I don't know why I struggle with thinking, well, it's not talking about my time. It's not talking about my
mhm,
whatever I think I need to be more careful about when it comes to giving to others. But I don't see that here. It just seems like if you have found a way where you can be a blessing to someone else, whatever it will cost you, God will more than make up for
mhm.
that.
Are you going to bring up Malachi 3, verse 10?
Go ahead.
I don't want to take something you were already going to talk about, but
No, it's
what
okay.
when you just said that, it made me think about Malachi 3:10, that says, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house, and test me now in this," says the Lord of hosts, "if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until it overflows." And
Hmm.
I don't know how much I'm taking that out of context, but I think it still applies that when you test God by obeying Him, and that's maybe it's not the right way of saying it, but God's saying, let me show you how I can prove this to you. If you give and you serve and you do all the things that I've told you to do, and then I'll pour it back into you so much
Hmm.
that you can't even count it. So that's
And
a,
wasn't it earlier in that chapter when God asked that question, will a man rob God?
yeah, just
And
two
the
verses
people are
earlier.
saying, how have we robbed you? And he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about their stinginess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he says, you put me to the test and
Yeah.
you be generous with other people and see if I don't bless you so much that you won't even have room to store it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good. And then Luke 6:38 is the one where given it shall be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, put in your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. So on this one, and I'm sure that's probably for most of us a more familiar verse,
Mm-hmm.
but in context, what he says right before this really hit home and it really stepped on my toes because in context, notice he's not just talking about financial giving. You be generous and you give, and but in verse 35 he's talking about loving our enemies. In verse 36 he's talking about being merciful, and in verse 37 he's talking about forgiving others.
Mm-hmm.
And so loving our enemies, being merciful, forgiving others. And then he says in verse 38, give and it shall be given to you. So I think it ties in all of those things. Give forgiveness to others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, give love and compassion to people that are
Mm-hmm.
rubbing you the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Give mercy because good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, we put into your lap. And that's going to come from God. And you've probably heard this before, but I love this visual and what this picture is talking about. And it's really that generous merchant in the marketplace who, he's measuring out the grain that you're wanting to buy. And he's not just trying to make it as
Mm-hmm.
skimpy as possible, but he's piling it
Yeah.
up and he's shaking it down and he's pressing it down and he's
Mm-hmm.
putting on some more
And
to where
more.
it's mounding over and even dropping over the sides, it says. running over. He's a very fair, generous merchant. And
Mhm.
that's what God is saying. You can't outgive me.
Yeah.
And and even in all of these other things that we think are so hard, but this guy hurt my family. This person did this person did that, or I've experienced this, or I've experienced that, or I don't think I can forgive
Mhm.
in this situation. God is saying you can. And not only that, it will be a huge blessing for you
Mhm.
because it's not going to be another human returning the favor. It's going to be God Almighty, our creator, our compassionate father,
Mhm.
the giver of all good things.
Yeah.
James 1:17. He's the one that's going to overwhelmingly return all of those good things back to us. Um, so in this section, I was thinking about, am I stingy with grace?
Mm.
As much as I want that for myself, from other people, certainly from God, am I stingy with grace and offering it to other people? There's a couple of other verses that in Proverbs that probably do have more to do with finances. I'm not really sure, but I think the principle fits here. Proverbs 11:24, one gives freely, yet grows all the richer. So that kind of goes back to what you were
Mhm.
saying. And then Proverbs 22:9, he who has a generous eye will be blessed.
Mm.
So we can be stingy with grace, or we can have a generous heart that looks for ways to extend love, mercy, forgiveness, and then we'll be
Mm.
blessed.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thought.
Hmm.
And not to take this in a negative direction, but I
Oh,
sort of not, well, it's a little bit off topic, sorry, but when I'm thinking about this, I have to say while I'm thinking about it, or I'll forget it. But in the passage, you're talking about good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, for by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. So many times in this passage and others that are like it, I've thought it's talking about God, that how we judge others, God will judge us that way. But I think that this talks about other people as well. I mean, it's not God necessarily, but when we are harsh in our judgment, other people are harsh to judge us. It's not just Judgment Day that I think this is talking about. It's not just God, you know, bringing us into judgment, but other people. When you are hard about um, how we see someone else or how we treat someone else, or when we judge what they've done, there's people around us that see that and they are going to return that to us. Um, so that's a little bit negative, sorry, but it's just something that I,
no, that's good. I don't think it's negative at all. I think it's a good point. Sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot by our own attitude.
yeah, well, I know I do. Anyway, sorry, move along.
That was good. And then Isaiah 58, verses 10 and 11, the one about, if you satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall rise in the darkness, your gloom shall be as the noonday. Well, what I loved about this one is, it starts out by saying, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of others, then it goes on to say, the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places. So again, it's that whole idea of um, seeing others having a need and wanting to do something about it, seeing their desires and wants and wanting to fulfill that for them and
Mhm.
give it to them and help them meet those desires. And then God turns around and he does that for us.
Mhm.
He sees the desires of our heart, and he will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. You should be like a watered garden. Again, there's that visual,
Mhm.
like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. So if you satisfy others, the Lord will satisfy you. And I couldn't help but notice that it seemed like he was describing it in multiple ways. Let me make this as comprehensive for you as possible, because here's what I want to do for you when you look out for others. Um, Refreshingly, we've already talked about like a watered garden. Generously, he says it's a spring of water, which has that source. It's
Mhm.
flowing. It's not just a little pool or a muddy puddle or trickle. It's a
Mhm.
spring, and continuously, whose waters do not fail. It's always flowing. And that's how God wants to take care of us when all we're doing is keeping our eyes open to those around us and having a heart that wants to jump in and do what we can.
Yeah. And it's a soft heart.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I think we have to continually work on and be aware of is not letting our heart grow hard, because it's hard not to do that when people say things, do things, when we're annoyed or when I see this in myself all the time. You tend to want to draw back and say, well, if they're not going to, then I'm not going to. If they're, but then you think about Romans 12:10, that outdo one another in giving honor. And that is the idea of going first and leading the way. But so when we're letting the Lord continually guide us, satisfy our desires, satisfy your desire in scorched places, give strength to your bones. There's a lot of rich words in there. Satisfy, like you said, continually guide. Yeah, it's beautiful
Mhm.
imagery.
Mhm. Well, and the contrast too, because I think some of those things we feel like we find ourselves in scorched places. I'm
Yeah,
burnout.
we
I'm
put
just burn
ourselves there.
out. Yeah.
Hmm.
And dried up and make your bones strong. I don't feel strong. I feel weak and needy myself, and but he says that God will satisfy you. And in contrast to those things, how you think you might be feeling. Instead, he wants to make you strong like a watered garden, So he takes all of that sometimes emptiness or depletion, or like you say, well, I don't know that you said it exactly this way, but in my mind, I was thinking that we can allow ourselves to get to that point where we're just resentful
Hmm.
instead of loving and compassionate. We don't want to be put out. We want to be comfortable. We don't, fill in the blank with whatever human tendency we might give into. And that God says that if you want to feel strong, if you want to feel like you can continue to serve and be refreshed, then that comes from not focusing on self and the pity party, the woe is me. Not that any of us would ever do that.
Today yet.
That's not going to land us where we want to
Hmm.
land. And and I think that it's always goes back to, what are we listening to? What are we filling our hearts with? Are we filling our hearts with the remind this truth? This is truth. This is how it really unfolds. And the only way to remember that is to let God show us that wisdom in his word. But or we can be filling our mind with a bunch of other things that make us dissatisfied, discontent, stingy,
Hmm.
unhappy, not a good life, not a
Yeah.
good mindset, not a happy space. You're not in a good
Hmm.
space today. I
Hmm.
ran across a quote and I couldn't find the source, but it's sort of similar to what you were saying a while ago. Refreshing another soul is not only divinely designed into our spiritual DNA, but carries with it a wonderful reciprocal blessing.
Can you read that one more time?
Yes, I can. Refreshing another soul is not only divinely designed into our spiritual DNA, but carries with it a wonderful reciprocal blessing.
Yeah. So God made us that way so that when
Yeah.
we obey him and when we are a blessing to others, then that's what we get in return without even, I think once you've done it a few times and you see that how much of a blessing it is to serve other people, then you realize, oh, well, then it almost starts feeling a little bit self-serving is not the right word, but when you know that you're going to be blessed when you do something for someone else, then it's like, okay, well, it makes it easier to do it, doesn't it?
It does, and that's a good point too. We know people like that they obviously find joy in serving others,
Hmm.
genuine joy, and it's probably because they've experienced it so much. I think you said in a class one time, if you've lost your joy in serving, it's probably a sign that you need to do some more serving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you've forgotten what it feels like to get outside of yourself and do something for somebody else. And I think it's another testimony to God's goodness. He made us to serve. He wants us to refresh others. But then he also says, "Oh, and by the way, I also want to refresh you
Yeah.
while you're doing this, and even more than you're doing for other people." Did he have to do that? Did he have to promise that? Of course not. He could have said, I need you to obey me, and here's what I want you to do.
Mhm.
We do need to obey him, and here's what we need to do. But he also wants to turn it around and make it beautiful for ourselves
Well, and
and
what go
in
ahead.
our best life. Give us
Yeah.
our best life through that avenue.
What I've grown to learn, and I mean, I'm still learning it, but what I've grown to learn is that I think as a child, when you hear God demands that we worship him, and I thought to myself, because that doesn't sound very, it just always sounded like, you're God's saying, you must honor me, you must worship me and me only. I don't know how to put into words how it made me feel, but I have grown to understand that he demands that because that is what will make us happy
Mhm.
and blessed in this life and on into the next. It's not because, he's not a jealous God because of our human, excuse me, our human definition of jealousy. It's because he knows that if we follow other gods, our lives will be miserable. But if we follow him,
Mhm.
then we'll be rewarded. We'll have all of the joy that we can in this life. But it just goes against, I think, what we are like as humans. But because God knows that we are but dust, as the scripture says, he understands that we're led that way.
Mhm.
But he wants to encourage us to follow him and serve him and obey him. So
Well, we're going to worship something or someone.
mhm,
So, as you said, God demands that we worship him because that's the very best thing we can do for ourselves, all across the board, all across
mhm,
the board. And I think it kind of reminds me of what we said a little bit last week about seeing that wisdom and people that have walked with God for decades. They've experienced that. And that the truth of that serving God and worshiping him is the blessed life, is the best life. And, it's good to have those reminders to see that in other people that have experienced it. And then, like you say, sometimes you got to get a little negative. You can see those reminders, the opposite side of that too. People have chosen to live self absorbed,
mhm,
dissatisfied, discontent. They're always stingy. They get their feelings hurt, whatever it might be. They're not happy.
mhm.
They're not happy. And all of that fretting and stressing about whether or not their needs are being met and life is fair for them has not made them happy.
Or they find happiness in unhappiness. I've known people like that.
That's true.
But
That's
that
true.
happiness is empty and it's
Yes.
always going to just lead you to needing and wanting more. And it's
Hmm.
terrible. Um, just maybe some soul searching about whether or not I'm a giver or a taker is kind of
Hmm.
what you're talking about here. And I was talking about this with a friend last week about people who are not givers, who are takers. And I don't think they even realize they're doing it. So I wonder what we can do to self-analyze and think about whether or not we are giving or taking. And I don't have the answer to that. I just thought of that. But I imagine these passages that you're talking about, if we looked at them and asked ourselves to be honest with ourselves, am I someone who is refreshing others? Am I watering others or am I waiting for someone to water me first? What does that look like?
Well, even if we have a hard time being that objective with ourselves, which I imagine is hard to do, we do know that if we actively take steps each week to look for tangible ways to refresh others, then we're at least acting that out,
Hmm.
here going forward. We will know that we're focusing on giving instead of just taking.
Yeah.
God wants to use us to refresh others. And I thought about Paul writing Philemon, he uses that very
Hmm.
word. And
Yeah.
Philemon 7, I've derived much joy and comfort from your love, my brother, because the hearts of the saints have been refreshed through you. I think that's one of my favorite verses in the New
Hmm.
Testament because of the way it's worded.
Yeah.
And I know we have personally experienced it so many times that our hearts have been refreshed because of the goodness of other people. And Paul, I love how the emphasis isn't just on himself, but it brought him joy to see other saints being refreshed.
Hmm.
And we know exactly what he's talking about because we're a family. And then in verse 20, he asks him, refresh my heart in Christ. And here the word refresh is to revive, to cause someone to gain relief from toil,
Mhm.
and then to cause to rest. So to revive, to give someone relief from toil, and to give someone rest. So I thought I would ask you, I'm not sure how to word it, but what are some things that you've maybe experienced that you found refreshing, or some things that you think would be refreshing for you that somebody else could do for you that would fill that for you? Did I?
Yeah.
I should
So,
have written down that question better.
so what have others done for me that has been refreshing for me? Is that kind of what
Yeah.
you're asking?
Yes. Or what would you find refreshing, even if it hasn't
Mhm.
been done for you? What would you find refreshing from somebody else?
I think one of the things is just noticing
Mhm.
if there's a lot going on in life and I am a little overwhelmed. If somebody just notices and grabs my hand and says, "Hey, you got a lot going on, but you're doing a great job." It's just words, maybe those words of affirmation, like the love language says. But
Mhm.
um, because I tend to not be someone that really wants you to do it for me, and I should be better about that. But just noticing makes me feel okay. It's not just my imagination that I feel like my top's about to blow off, but I've known people that they just they give so much of themselves by sitting you down, and then they ask you all about yourself and they want to know about you, and just giving you a chance to maybe when your life is in ministry, for someone else to minister to you
Mhm.
is refreshing. And what does that look like? I mean, it can look like a lot of different things, but just maybe sympathy is not the right word, but just someone that understands. Maybe understanding would be a good thing. Understanding and listening and noticing. Those would be things that would be refreshing for me.
Mhm.
What about you?
Yeah, I started thinking about it and I thought, in recent times, when have been some moments when I walked away refreshed. And one of them we had a whole episode about. It was the round table.
Hmm.
And it's just because we were kind of all stuck together for several hours of just good conversation.
Yeah.
And we were forced to slow down. We were all away from home, so there weren't any interruptions or schedules to meet, or,
Hmm.
and it
We
was
couldn't pick
just,
up our phone in the middle of it and
we
look at
could
it. Hmm.
not. We could not. That's absolutely right. It was just like the whole world was just shut out,
Hmm.
and it was just a few ladies sitting together and talking. And then, in the weeks since, there have been a couple of times when I've had an opportunity to just go out and have coffee with somebody for no reason. It
Hmm.
wasn't a planning meeting. It wasn't, how it always seems like you have to come up with a reason
Yeah, it's a
to get
meeting.
together or something.
Hmm.
It was just coffee
Hmm.
and talking and without rushing. And I don't know, I didn't realize I needed that or would enjoy it so much, but I just walked away thinking that was so nice.
Yeah.
Just
And I
just
guess
a
that is
visit.
understanding and listening and
Yeah, it's the
kind of those
same
things.
things.
Hmm.
Yeah, just some time with some good Christian women, and you can talk about real things and silly things or whatever you want. And part of it for me is the unhurried, unrushed aspect of it, because it's such a respite. When you're always trying to get everything checked off on your to do list
Hmm.
for the day.
Yeah.
But so I was looking up some ways of how to relieve others of their burdens, because that was part of the definition of the word refresh.
Hmm.
And so how we can refresh others, and there were a variety of things, but they seem to all really say exactly what we're both saying right
Yeah.
now. But here are some specific ways. The first one you've already mentioned. It calls for awareness right out of the gate. You have to have that sensitivity that even wants to see other people and pay
Hmm.
attention, to even know that they're toiling, like you said,
Yeah.
or that they might need a break. They need a little rest. They need something. They need to be refreshed. And so it's a desire to pay attention. Acts of kindness, positive words of encouragement, of course, a listening ear. This one I thought was really good. A simple change of pace.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about people who are in caregiving situations, and their days look the same day in and day out.
Yeah.
A simple change of pace can bring a feeling of renewal and revitalization.
Mm.
So maybe, taking somebody to lunch or having them over for dinner or just going and sitting with whoever they sit with for a
Yeah.
couple hours so they can go shopping, acknowledging their efforts. That was what you just mentioned. Be sincere, of course. I just added pray for open eyes and an open heart and wisdom to know how to help. We've talked about this before, but
Mhm.
you have a knack for that. You have such a practical eye and can think of things that are, simple in hindsight, simple, but so practical, so helpful, so natural. And I feel like I can see that there's a need and I'm going, what should I do?
You do.
So pray for wisdom to know how to help. What can I do in this situation that will be welcome, not
Mhm.
intrusive?
That's the thing.
You
That's
don't want
hard to
to
know.
you don't want to look like you're getting in somebody's business and they're
Mhm.
like, this is Nunya. This
Yeah.
I don't really appreciate the interference right now. But
Mhm.
open eyes, open heart, and wisdom to know how to help. Notice how they tend to encourage others. This is one of the ones that I found. And interestingly enough, they mentioned the love languages,
Mm.
like you just did. So, what are they doing for other people? Are they always verbally lifting people up? Are they always doing little acts of service
Yeah.
or gifts? All of those things.
Wow.
If that's what they're
Mhm.
doing for others, then that's
They
what
need
lights
it.
them up.
Yeah.
That's what makes them feel good. And so, if we pay attention to that, we can reciprocate in kind, and they would find that refreshing for
Wow, that
themselves.
makes so much sense
Yeah, it
because
does.
that's the language they speak. And so they need that
Mhm.
language spoken to them.
Yeah, and you can probably
Wow.
just close your eyes and think of individuals and think, you know
Hmm.
what? They are always writing sweet notes. They are always saying nice words. They are always bringing homemade
Little
food to
gift
people.
givers.
They're
Hmm.
yeah. And then I thought this one was interesting too. Talk positively about them to other people.
Hmm.
And it was talking about even if they're not in the hearing of that, somehow it always comes back
Yeah.
around. And
Yeah.
a roundabout compliment like that is way better. When you
Hmm.
hear it from somebody else who heard somebody talking about you to somebody else,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
And be the person that tells someone, I heard this good
Yes,
thing about you.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. So, some things we might ask. What can I do this week to revive someone else? So, in light of that definition, to cause someone to gain relief from toil, to refresh, to rest, what can I do to offer someone relief from their toil? And if we look around, we can find people who are definitely toiling, in
Hmm.
various ways. How can I give someone an opportunity to rest? So those are very simple. And I don't think that they have to be an all-day affair, this big deal, but I bet you there's a lot of little small ways that we can accomplish these things, and it would be huge to somebody else. A huge
Hmm.
refreshment, and just the surprise of it and the thoughtfulness of it would probably make somebody's day. And I thought a couple of things to remember. One is don't refresh others just to get something in return. So
Yeah.
we're talking about, God says if you do this for other people, then I will do it for you in big measure, but
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that's our motivation, because it's not very generous at
Yeah.
all if all we're doing is thinking about ourselves and what we can really
Hmm.
get out of it. And then number two, and I think you alluded to this a minute ago, allow others to refresh you.
Hmm. As you would
Um,
say, don't steal my blessing to
yeah,
bless you.
yeah, and that can be hard. That can be hard for some people, but not only do we need it, and that's why God's put all of this in the Word, because we need each other, and He wants us to refresh each other's hearts. But it's also good for them too.
Hmm.
And I think about people in situations that feel like they're always on the receiving end. I felt that way a lot in life.
Yeah.
I felt like, um, people are. Can you hear Bear barking? Is that
Hmm.
coming across?
I can hear a little,
Sorry.
it's muted.
Yeah, he's shut in the basement. But I feel like we've been so blessed so many times through the years, that sometimes it does feel like we're always taking, 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 taking. That if there ever is an opportunity to do something, it's like a big deal to me. I'm
Hmm.
like, you mean there's something that we can do? There's something that we can offer that
Yeah.
somebody actually would find useful or want. It feels good.
Hmm.
It just does. And so allow others to refresh you, because just get your pride out of the way. Just get the idea out of the way that you don't want to put anybody out.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to do that. There's other people in worse situations than you are. We all
Yeah,
think those things, but it's a blessing both ways.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole, maybe just one way of pulling this all together is just be a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Look for ways to be a blessing. And I need to do that more. One of the passages that I thought of when you brought up this topic was Micah 6:8. He has told you, old man, not old man. He has told you, oh man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. And I thought about it, just kind of popped out to me today about not to do kindness, but to love kindness. And I thought that was kind of neat just to think about. Sometimes we are kind because we have to be. What is it, the old saying that my mama told me, if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all, kind of deal. If you can't do something nice, I mean, love kindness, want to be kind. And that's something that we have to develop our hearts to look for ways to be kind and to want to be kind. Because sometimes we can do things because we know we're supposed to be.
We feel like it's expected of us.
Yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. But it's another thing to love to be kind. So that's something to aspire to.
Makes me think of 1 Corinthians 13. The first part of that love chapter talks about all these good works that we can do. But if we do it without the motivation of love, it's worthless.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Yes, that's a great way to conclude this topic. Do you have anything else before we get into our something good for you? Something goods for you?
Something's good. No.
Something's good.
No, I think let's just go straight into the something's good for us.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, well, I thought I was going to do something else. I'll just show them to you that it's a box of verses and they are cards. I'm going to do two but these are just cards. They're like cardstock and it's just one piece of paper, but you can stick them in your cards for someone. And it's just a verse, but love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to get anything back. But it's got this little box. I think it came from Mardell or somewhere like that. But there's different categories: faith, hope, comfort, love. So when you're sending a card, you can just stick this in there. But I took one and taped it onto my mom's mirror. I knew it was her. When I pulled it out for something else, I knew it was one of her favorites. So I just taped it on her mirror in her bathroom. So there's lots of different uses for it. But that's not my something good for you.
But that's a good way to refresh the heart of others.
Yeah. So this was something you and I were laughing about earlier before we started recording, but we were saying, it's really not nice when we say, I told you so. So this was.
I mean, I would never say it out loud.
Yeah. Now, here is a professional way to say, I told you so. It's a nicer, softer, just professional way of saying it.
Okay.
So everybody needs to write this down so they can use it later. Instead of saying, I told you so, you can say, this was identified early on as a likely outcome.
Love it.
I do too, because you can say that and it doesn't come across as, I told you so if you'd listened to me in the first place. That has a different ring than this was identified early on as a likely outcome.
Likely outcome.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of goes and flies in the face of everything we just talked about.
Just as you're saying those words, I'm thinking, I just undid everything I just said.
I don't think if you use that, professional or not, it's going to refresh anybody.
Except for that slight little kick that you feel when you get to say it.
Yeah.
Which disappears immediately because you shouldn't have said it. But anyway, it's just a fun. I'm just giving it to you to laugh about, not to use.
That's cute. That's cute. Yeah. Okay, so mine's a makeup product. Okay, so it's a lip gloss. And it's by e.l.f., which is a very expensive cosmetic brand. And usually,
did you say expensive or inexpensive?
It's inexpensive.
Okay.
And I like the idea of lip gloss, but I hardly ever find one that I actually like. I don't like the way they're usually gloppy and your hair sticks to it and all that other kind of stuff. And but this one I saw recommended recently and gave it a try, and I actually love everything about it.
Cool.
And first of all, it's cheap. So depending on where you find it, it's either going to be $7 or $8.
Okay.
And then the color is just, just enough to be enough, but not overwhelming, but it's still kind of sheer like a lip gloss is supposed to be.
You gonna give us a demonstration?
Yeah, okay, here we go. Do I look like an influencer? But then there's the applicator tip itself. It's really
Mhm.
wide and soft and spongy. It feels so good, but this is it's conditioning. So
Okay.
it's not that gloppy feel. It feels very
Mhm.
smooth and conditioning going on, and I love it. This particular color is called Rose Envy.
Yeah, and you don't look gloppy at all. Just
Rose
shiny.
Envy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it conditions. So a little bit of shine, but a lot of conditioning. So there you
Mhm.
go.
All right. You can be a blessing while you don't have gloppy lips and you're
That's right. That's right. That's mine. All right.
good.
So I enjoyed having this conversation with you. Ladies, if you're still with us, thank you so much for hanging with us for this episode. We look forward to having you back again next week. And Carla, until then,
Keep looking up.
love you, friend. Have
Love you
a
too.
good week. Great job on your lessons and everything else.
I wish you were here.
Me too. Me too. Love you.
I'll send a hug through Neil.
I'd
Love you
appreciate
too.
it.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.